Hi members, in this video, which is part 2 of our setting up a Microsoft 365 Business Premium tenant, we are going to move on to the next step, which is to configure your security protection. In the first video, you might recall that we talked very briefly about sign-in and setup of your tenant, adding domains, deciding on your identity methodology. Let's move on to step 2 in this very handy learn.microsoft.com guide and look at what we need to be thinking of to configure our security protection in Microsoft 365 Business Premium. Okay, we've got some steps to follow. As per the last video, if you go through this, you can work through this yourself with guided videos to help you through and configure Business Premium step by step. It goes through nice series of things that you need to be doing 1 to 6, and we'll work through these individually, so we're getting real value out of this and you're going to have a good feel of what you need to do. So there are 6 steps here, and we're going to do these one step at a time, one video at a time. So the next thing that we need to do, or the first thing that we need to do, I should say, is to turn on multi-factor authentication for your organization. That should be security 101 for any organization these days. I would hope that we all know that. But let's just open that in a new tab there and see what it's going to tell us about this. What do we need to do and what do we need to be aware of? Let's just quickly go through some of these details because there are some gotchas. So MFA, definitely a critical first step in securing your organization. And with Business Premium, and with most new tenants these days, if not all new tenants, regardless of the licensing that you add, you will have the option to use what is called security defaults or something called conditional access. Now, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, you're familiar with Microsoft 365, you're going to know what conditional access is. But you've got a choice at this stage if you're new to this, and you can use these principles to turn on MFA for your admins and your user accounts. Now, what it says here, most organizations will find that security defaults offer a good level of sign-in security. But if your organization must meet more stringent requirements, you should consider using conditional access policies instead. What I would say to that is that security defaults are a set of security settings and principles that are turned on for your protection when your tenant is first activated. Now, I think from memory, they don't necessarily apply automatically for a period of perhaps 14 days, I think it is, but I think it's about that. But I find that security defaults are probably never going to be massively appropriate for any organization. I would want more control. And the reason I say that is because it's a very sledgehammer type approach. It has things that are on or off. And you might find, even with Business Premium, which, let's face it, can go up to 300 licensed users, that you are going to want some granularity of control for sets and subsets of those users. You want that flexibility. So I would say right from the get-go, forget about security defaults. Look to conditional access to put policies and controls in for your admins and user accounts. So we've got information here about what these are, security defaults and conditional access, and we can tab between them. So I'm not going to read that out again because I just explained it myself. Conditional access, here it's telling you a bit more about what that is. If your company needs that more, and I've used that word already, that more granular control over your security policies, then do use conditional access instead. And it allows you to create and define policies that react to sign-in events and request other actions before a user is granted access to a particular application or service. So it's basically an if this happens, then do that tool. It's going to either, depending on those conditions, allow or block access or various other things. And these policies can be granular and specific, empowering users to be productive wherever and whenever, but also protecting your organizations. Security defaults are available, as we've already said, to all customers, and conditional access requires one of the following subscriptions. And we can see here that the one we're interested in is Microsoft 365 Business Premium. And I recall very clearly when Microsoft 365 Business Premium first was launched, many years ago now, longer than I probably care to admit, one of the real selling points of it was the fact that it granted organizations access to this powerful conditional access. And here it gives you some examples of if you're wanting to use conditional access to configure policies. There are some step-by-step guides. We can require MFA for administrators. We can require MFA for Azure management. We can block legacy authentication. We can require MFA for all users, etc., etc. So there we go. But we're just simply interested in turning on MFA here. What does that look like? Now, what you could do previously is you could enable MFA just through the M365 Admin Center itself in a legacy experience. That is not something you always want to configure MFA using conditional access now. Now, you can't actually do this right from the Admin Center here, but what you want to get yourself to is the Microsoft Entra Admin Center. Microsoft Entra is the term for identity for all things in Microsoft 365. And if we scroll on this left-hand bar here, as I've already done, to the other admin centers, and we will go into some of these as we go through this series, we want to look at identity. And identity reads Entra. So if we click on that, it's going to open in a new tab our Entra Admin Center. And there we are into Microsoft Entra now. Okie doke. So as we look at this page, we can see we have a very familiar layout similar to what we had in the M365 Admin Center, with a left-hand launcher of particular applications and the big pane to see the finer detail of those applications. But where we want to be here is conditional access. So I'll just collapse identity there, and I will expand protection. And here we are. We can see conditional access is available to us. Now that I'm in there, I'll just collapse that side screen, and I am going to go into policies. Okay, I've got no policies in here, but I'm going to go ahead and create one, which is going to require MFA for all users. Now, the fact that you see MFA already activated for my account that I'm logged in as, my global admin, means that I configured this outside of conditional access. But as I said, that's not something we're going to do. In fact, it's important to point out that that global admin account that I'm using, in a real scenario, you would potentially or very likely exclude that from your conditional access policies for MFA, or exclude accounts that have that privilege and are designated your break glass or emergency accounts, and authenticate them with another methodology. I'll digress on that right now because I want to keep focus on this. But here we go. We can set up a new policy from here. You can do a new policy from a template, actually. So there are quick shortcuts how you can do that now. So if you go to templates, you can actually do this right from here. So require MFA for admins, all sorts of stuff in there. Require multi-factor authentication for all users. So you can put that in place as well. If you're not comfortable with using those templates, you can just go ahead and do it manually, and I'm just going to do that just for familiarity and comfort, to be honest. So here we go, a new conditional access policy, and we can give it a name. We can say require MFA for all users. Assignments. Now this is very important. You need to be sure that you're not going to lock anybody out, including yourself in this process, because if conditional access goes wrong, then you can very, very easily get yourself locked out. So you have a choice here to include all users, or you can select specific users and groups. So you can put in the particular users and groups that you want to select from, and you can exclude users as well. So what I'll actually do here is I shall select all users, and it's given me that warning there. Don't lock yourself out. This policy will affect all of your users. We recommend applying to a small set of users first to verify it behaves as expected. So what you would do here is you would click on exclude, and you could exclude particular users and groups that you want to. You could exclude directory roles or guests or external users. But what I'll go in and do here is I'll go in and I will exclude. There we go. I've got a break glass account set up there. So I will specifically go ahead and exclude that one. And as I'm already using MFA for my own account, which is that one, I'll exclude that as well, just because. But there you go, and there you can see that those users are excluded. These users are, all users are included. We can then select target resources. Now this was formerly known as cloud apps. So if you're familiar with conditional access but haven't been in for a while, then just to show you that has changed name. So conditional or control access based on all or specific apps, internet resources, actions, or authentication context. So we can choose what the policy basically is going to apply to. So usually 9 times out of 10 you will select resources here. You can alternatively select user actions. What does this apply to? This will apply to registering security information, registering or joining devices, or you can select an authentication context, which is something that is used to secure application data and actions in apps like SharePoint and Microsoft Cloud App Security, which is more appropriately called Defender for cloud apps these days. And you can set authentication contexts up yourself, which is something that I have covered before. I've covered all of this before actually in other videos. But let's go back to resources, and you can choose none. You can leave it none. You can choose all internet resources with a global secure access. That's grayed out. I'm going to believe because I don't have the licensing necessary for global secure access in Microsoft Entra with Business Premium. I can select all resources, and again it gives you a warning not to lock yourself out, or you can select specific resources here, and then you can edit a filter if need be. So you can go into there and filter based on expressions, and then select the resources that you want to put in. So here you can search for the resource that you want. You can go for Office 365, which includes many other things such as Teams and Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Yammer and others, all sorts of different things. And we can select that just for this example. So basically, if any of those users, apart from the ones I've excluded, log on, they're going to be asked for MFA. If they've not had MFA before, they're going to be asked to register for it. So we can select that. That's cool. I'm going to skip over the network feature because that's new and I've not had a chance to really explore that before. It's something I might can discuss in another video for everyone on the channel, because I think that might be an interesting thing to look at in a deeper dive. We can now put conditions into our conditional access policy as well, and we can do that based on signals from conditions such as devices, locations, client apps, filtering on devices, and authentication flows. So for example, device platforms, it's going to do this to the selected device platforms if you configure it by any device, or you can go specific and you can put Windows, and I'll just put it as Windows in this case. You can again exclude If you want to, you can exclude certain things there. I'll leave that as it is, and we'll do that based on that device. Okay, and then we've got our access controls. And what we want to do here is we want to require multi-factor authentication. And that is the most basic form of applying MFA to an organization. You can do other things, but again, we'll not dive too deeply into that here. So there we go. We'll select that because I'm happy with that. One control selected. And there are session controls as well. This may be something that we'll look at a bit later in the series, but just to quickly give you an idea of the sort of things you can put in there. You can use app enforced restrictions, various other things, but I don't want to do that just now. Now, what you can do here is you can turn that policy on right away, or you can leave it off. I would always encourage not to turn it on right away. I would put it into report only mode first, and then look at your logs and see what would happen, rather than turning it on and it's actually going to apply. So look at that, and then only when you're ready, turn it to on, and perhaps select a smaller group of test users than I've done just there. So you can create that conditional access policy. That is successfully created for all the users that we've done it for. I'm in policies. If I give that a little refresh, it should show me the policy that I have created now for conditional access. So there we go. Require MFA for all users. Shows me the name, the state, it's in report only, the date it was created, and I can go back into it and I can make any changes that I want to do. And that for all of your users is definitely Security 101 for any Microsoft tenant. Give your users MFA at the very least. And there are all sorts of things you can do to prevent things like token theft, because which is something we can talk about a little bit later in this series, and something that's quite relevant these days, because the cyber bad guys are getting cleverer. They know MFA is out there, but they do know as well that if you've only got it applied in a basic way, then they can go in and they can do some clever things and get users to click on links which will enable them to steal tokens, and you can do some things to protect yourself against that, like requiring compliant devices with conditional access. But there you go. That is conditional access to set up MFA. So that is another one checked off there. Turn on multi-factor authentication. Let's just, while we're here, just before we go, let's just see what protect your admin account says, because this may also relate to MFA. We might just cover this in the same video. So you're going to need admin accounts here and there, and you're going to need emergency admin accounts or break glass accounts. So consider how you're going to protect those as well. And because admin accounts come with elevated privileges, they're valuable targets for those attackers. And this article here, it describes how you can set up other admin accounts for emergencies, how to create an emergency admin account, how to create a user account for yourself, how to protect admin accounts, and additional information for your next steps. So yeah, nice and simple really. Shows you how to add other admin accounts and assign those admin center access to them, like global admins and so on and so forth. Here we go. Create an emergency admin account. You should create that backup account that isn't set up with MFA, so you don't accidentally lock yourself out. So if you lose your phone, for example, that you're using as a second form of verification, make sure that password for this account is a phrase or at least 16 characters long. This emergency admin account is often referred to as a break glass account. Despite this here saying excluded from MFA, there are schools of thought more recently that suggest that you should apply conditional access to your emergency admin accounts, but protect them in a different way by using hardware tokens like a YubiKey, for example. So do think very, very carefully about that as well. This sort of advice here of not giving it extra protection is quite outdated, I believe, and a bit irresponsible. Shows you how to create a user account for yourself. Protecting admin accounts. Let's have a look and see what it says here. You can require all admin accounts to use passwordless authentication, such as Windows Hello or an authenticator app or MFA. To learn more about why passwordless authentication is important, you can read up this white paper here about passwordless protection. Now, passwordless is a good thing to turn on, actually, and particularly for admin accounts, because if you don't have a password, then there's nothing for that hacker to try and crack. So what you can do with passwordless authentication is you can use the authenticator app and do things like number matching to log into those admin accounts. So it also says avoid using custom permissions for admins. Instead of granting permissions to specific users, assign permissions through roles in Entra ID and grant access to only the data and operations needed. Least privileged roles is what we're talking about there. So yeah, definitely think about that in terms of your break glass accounts, your emergency account, and your admin accounts. Think about how you want to protect them. So that about does it for that video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll be back with another members only video very, very soon with more on making the most of your business premium.